Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going all the way to France.
Ooh la la.
Yeah, to learn about what it's like to work with unaccompanied minors who are seeking refuge there.
Okay.
Our primary source is this really interesting blog post.
Right.
It's called Mon travail à la Croix-Rouge française,
I like it.
which translates to my work at the French Red Cross.
Yeah.
It's written by someone named Ponsaya.
Oh, cool.
And I think this deep dive will really give us some insight into her work and the lives of the young people she supports.
It's really cool that we get this personal perspective, I think.
Yeah.
You know, we often just hear about this kind of thing in terms of like statistics and policies, but this blog really gives us a window into the human side of things.
It does.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear more about it.
Before we get too far, I bet our listeners are wondering,
Yeah.
what's the situation in France like
Yeah.
regarding unaccompanied minors? Well, France, like a lot of European countries, sees a good number of these young people arriving, often after these really difficult journeys.
It's tough.
But it's important to note that France offers them legal protections,
Good.
including the right to education.
Okay, that's good.
So,
Yeah. So how does that work? Like, how do they go to school?
yeah, that's where this organization comes in, the Aide Sociale à l'Enfance, or ASE,
Okay.
and they're a child protection agency in France.
Right.
And they are responsible for placing these unaccompanied minors in shelters.
Okay.
It's a really complex system. I mean, Ponthai actually mentions in her blog that sometimes hotels are even used
Wow.
as like temporary housing while these kids wait for a more permanent placement.
Wow. So they might be in a hotel for a little while.
Yeah.
And then,
Exactly.
okay.
So it kind of paints a picture of just how hard this is.
Yeah.
This legal obligation to provide care and shelter is one thing, but then the reality of actually, finding the right placements for all of these minors
Right.
isn't always easy.
Yeah, definitely not.
Uh,
A lot of challenges for sure.
Yeah. Before we get too far into the, complexities of this whole system,
Yeah.
let's try to get to know Panthai a little better.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk about her a little.
So her blog
Yeah.
tells us she was drawn to this position because of her previous experience working with refugees.
Oh, cool.
So she already had this kind of background.
She had some experience with that population.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it seems like she has this real passion for combining like teaching and social work.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel that way, I think.
Yeah, you can really feel her dedication and empathy in her writing.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that she's very open about her initial anxieties about this job.
Oh, really?
She describes going to her interview at the Grand Chateau,
Oh, wow.
this really impressive building that houses the Red Cross program.
Fancy.
Yeah. And she admits to feeling kind of nervous,
Hmm.
about connecting with these teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
And even just like managing a classroom full of them.
Yeah. That's understandable.
I think anybody would feel apprehensive in that situation.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially with teenagers. That can be tough.
Especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a really delicate balance.
Oh.
When you're working with vulnerable youth, providing support,
Mm-hmm.
but also maintaining professional boundaries.
Right. You don't want to get too close.
Yeah, you got to walk that line.
But you also have to be supportive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes her blog so interesting, is it's so honest and raw.
I like that.
And it doesn't shy away from the emotional challenges of the work.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses.
Right. But at the same time, she celebrates the small victories
Yeah.
and, the connections that she builds along the way.
I bet.
So it's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting perspective.
Speaking of connections,
Yeah.
she shares in the blog that she sometimes feels like a sister
Wow.
to the young people she works with. And when I read that, I thought, wow, that really reveals how much trust and rapport she's built with
Oh,
them.
no, that's really special.
That kind of connection can be so crucial for these minors. I mean,
Yeah.
they've been through so much.
Absolutely.
And it highlights this key aspect of working with them,
Yeah. What's that?
going beyond just teaching and really trying to provide a sense of stability and belonging.
Right. So it's more than just teaching them facts and figures.
It is.
It's about making them feel safe and welcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where understanding, the challenges of the ASE system
Mm-hmm.
becomes even more critical, I think.
Yeah. Why is that?
Because, these young people are often navigating a new country,
It's a lot.
a new language,
Right.
and this complex bureaucratic system.
Definitely a lot to handle.
And we can't forget about the educational hurdles.
Yeah. Like what?
Well, Panthaya mentions working with minors who are classified as NSA, which means never been schooled.
Wow. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It means she's not just helping them catch up. She's introducing them to formal education
For the first time.
for the very first time.
Wow. That must be so rewarding
It must be.
and challenging.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So it just adds another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
It does.
And it really speaks to her dedication and resilience.
For sure.
I mean, imagine having the patience and creativity to help a teenager navigate their first math problem ever,
Oh my God.
or learn the alphabet in a totally new language.
That's amazing.
I know.
Good for her.
Yeah. And you know what's really cool?
What?
Panthaya doesn't just focus on her own personal experiences in her blog.
Oh, that's good.
She also wants to bring attention to the bigger issues surrounding unaccompanied minors in France in general.
Oh, okay. How does she do that?
Well, she includes all these links to like documentaries
Oh, cool.
and news articles
Yeah.
that offer a wider perspective.
So she's encouraging people to learn more
Exactly.
to get a bigger picture.
Yes. She's saying, hey, here's my experience, but now go learn more.
Yeah.
Understand the bigger picture
Become part of the solution.
and become part of the
I
solution.
love that.
Yeah.
That's great.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do here
It is.
with this deep dive. You know, we're
Yeah.
diving deep into Panthaya's world to hopefully spark your curiosity
Hmm.
and inspire you to think more deeply about these issues.
That's what we do here.
This is what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is like a call to action
Yeah.
kind of woven into her story.
Yeah.
She's inviting us all to be more informed and engaged.
And, you know, as we're talking about this, I'm realizing how much Panthaya's role goes beyond just like being a teacher.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's almost like she's playing multiple roles.
Yeah, she describes helping with homework and going with them to school,
Yeah.
even helping them think about potential career paths.
It's like she's a teacher, a mentor,
Yeah,
a confidant all in one.
a friend.
Yeah. And speaking of multiple roles, you mentioned earlier that the ASE system is complex.
Oh, yeah.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah.
Like, what are some of the challenges it faces?
I mean, for one thing, resources are often stretched pretty thin.
Yeah, I can imagine.
There's just this constant need for more funding,
Yeah.
more qualified staff,
Right.
more facilities.
To accommodate all these young people,
Yeah.
I imagine navigating the bureaucratic hurdles of the system is a challenge in itself, too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Especially for minors who might not be familiar with the French language or the legal processes.
Exactly. You're totally right. It's a lot to handle, even for someone who grew up in the system.
Right.
So imagine trying to navigate it all as a teenager who just arrived
And who may have been traumatized
in a foreign country.
by their experiences.
Yeah, it's really tough.
It really underscores how important people like Panthaya are,
Absolutely.
who can act as advocates and guides for these young people.
She's not just teaching French or math.
Right.
She's helping them understand their rights, navigate this complex system, and build a new life.
It's incredibly impactful work.
It really is.
It makes me wonder, what are some potential solutions to these big systemic challenges?
Well, besides advocating for more resources, there are some organizations that are trying new things.
Like what?
Well, some are experimenting with mentoring programs
Okay.
that connect the minors with local families or people
Oh, cool.
who can provide some emotional support and guidance.
So they have somebody there.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And others are working on building more understanding between cultures and communities
Okay.
to make things more welcoming.
I like that.
Yeah,
Those sound like really promising initiatives.
they are.
It's encouraging to know that people are working on solutions that go beyond just the immediate needs
Oh.
of these young people.
It's about long-term change.
And it all comes back to Panthaya's call to action.
It does.
She's inspiring us not just to learn more,
Right.
but to find ways to create change.
Right.
Whether it's volunteering or donating to these organizations
Yeah.
or just raising awareness,
Mm-hmm.
we can all do something
Yeah, anyone can make a difference.
to create a more supportive world
Or these kids who need it.
for these unaccompanied minors.
Yeah, and what strikes me as really inspiring
What's that?
is that Panthaya doesn't just focus on the negative stuff.
Yeah, she doesn't dwell on it.
She celebrates how resilient and determined these young people are.
Yeah, she talks about how impressed she is by their motivation to learn
I bet.
and their ability to adapt
It's amazing.
in new situations.
And their hope for the future.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
It's a good reminder that even when things are really hard, the human spirit can thrive.
You got it.
And that's why it's so important to support these young people,
To give them a chance.
to give them the opportunities to reach their full potential.
It's a beautiful thought.
It is. And it brings us to why we're doing this deep dive.
Why are we doing this?
It's not just about understanding a complex system or the challenges that this group faces.
It's bigger than that.
It's about remembering that we're all human
We are?
and finding ways to make a world where everyone can flourish,
I love that.
no matter their background
Well said.
or circumstances.
And, as we go further into Panthaya's blog,
Yeah.
we find another layer of complexity
Oh, really?
that adds a whole new dimension.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Well, she includes this link to a news article
Okay.
about a controversy surrounding the age assessment of unaccompanied minors.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
So when these young people arrive, figuring out their exact age isn't always easy.
Right, it can be tricky.
And if a minor's age is disputed, it could really affect their access to certain protections and services.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like if they're deemed to be over 18, they might not get the support that's intended for minors.
Exactly.
So it's a really sensitive topic
It is.
and a real challenge.
For sure.
And this news article that she links to talks about how France is considering new methods for age assessment,
Interesting.
including medical exams
Wow.
and interviews with social workers. But there's a lot of debate about, finding the most ethical
Yeah.
and accurate approaches.
It's tough because you're dealing with people who may have experienced trauma
Exactly.
or have limited documentation.
Yeah.
So determining their age requires a really careful approach.
It's a delicate balancing act.
It is.
And it makes me think about something you said earlier about cultural sensitivity
Oh, yeah.
within the ASE system.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So, like many countries, France is becoming more and more diverse. And the ASE has to adapt to meet the needs of all these young people
Right.
from different cultures.
So it's not just about language barriers.
No, definitely not.
Right.
Like there are cultural things that can influence how someone interacts with authority figures
Yeah.
or expresses their emotions.
Yeah, like in some cultures, it's disrespectful to make eye contact with an adult.
Yeah.
And that could be totally misinterpreted in a school setting.
Exactly.
It's amazing how these little cultural differences have such a big impact
It's true.
on how well these young people integrate
Yeah, and how they feel.
and their overall well-being.
Totally.
And this is where I think Panthaya's approach is so great.
Yeah.
Remember how she talked about feeling like a sister?
Mm-hmm.
That connection lets her understand each person's individual needs.
No matter where they come from.
It's about building trust and respecting differences.
By making them feel safe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's so great about Panthaya is that she's honest about the difficulties.
She doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, she acknowledges the tough stuff
The frustration.
and the emotional toll it takes.
But she's still committed to advocating for these young people.
That's the inspiring part.
It is.
It's realizing that while system change is important,
Mm-hmm.
personal connections can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
Panthaya's blog reminds us that even with all these challenges,
Mm-hmm.
human compassion can make a real difference.
Well said.
Yeah, it's a powerful message.
It is.
Panthaya's story shows us the power of individual action
Mm-hmm.
and how important it is to really engage with these issues
On a personal level.
on a personal and a societal level.
Yeah, it gives us a lot to think about.
It does.
For sure.
So I think we'll wrap up our deep dive here.
Okay.
A huge thank you to Panthaya for sharing her story
Yeah, thank you.
and inspiring us all to think a little deeper
To question more.
and keep diving deep into the world around us.
I like that.
Thank you all for listening.
See you next time.